Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spotlight Masterclass. Thank you for coming on. And like always, we've got the lovely Amanda here with us today. And today we'll be discussing compliance, regulation, and industry standards. And of course, we always start with housekeeping. And who best to do that than Amanda?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Spotlight Masterclass. I'll keep this quick because I'm sure many of you have watched a few of these, so you know the drill. We don't replace your broker or your accountants. We're your strategic advisors when it comes to purchasing property. We are buyer's agents. So we help you, I suppose, design, manage, purchase your portfolio and help you choose the best properties and the best strategy for your situation. Now, of course, when we do give that advice, we take a full assessment of you and your situation. But for the purpose of this class, there are many of you, and we're obviously pitching to a broader audience than just yourself. So just note that the information that we provide today is general in nature and that it hasn't been personalized to your individual circumstances. So take a look there at the disclaimer, just to be clear that you're aware that this information is general in nature. So today's topic is topic 6, as you know, or as you may not know, depends if this is your first one. All our topics for these Spotlight Masterclasses work in pairs, where we look at 2 topics side by side in 2 separate classes. So today we're looking at compliance and regulation for buyer's agents. And then in the twin class to this class, we'll look at how to cut through the marketing spin to know what you're hiring. So the point of this pair of topics is to look at, if you are thinking about hiring a buyer's agent, is knowing whether you are actually hiring a buyer's agent. There are a lot of companies, people, businesses, approaches, strategies that look like buyer's agents but may not be. Or it might be a case of who is providing the information to you and why.
Yeah,
So looking at what's going on.
they could call themselves wealth creators, and that's just the title of their business. But when you really look into it, they're actually assisting somebody else for their benefit and not yours.
Yeah, so this pair of topics breaks all that down for you. So this one is about the compliance and industry standards. So what does a buyer's agent need to be or need to have by way of compliance?
Yeah.
The twin class to this one, how to cut through the marketing spear, is looking at how they might pitch their services to you if they are a buyer's agent or if they're looking like a buyer's agent but maybe not one. So always try to catch these masterclasses in pairs if you can. I mean, obviously try and catch them all. They're free. Why not? But if you watch one, try and watch the pair to get the full picture for each subtopic.
That's right. And like always, guys, if you want a one-on-one with myself, because obviously each person is individual to their goals and needs and what they're aiming for, scan the QR code that's presented here or go to propertysessions.com.au/15. It will be direct discussion with myself. So we'll hopefully chat with you then. A little bit about myself. I've been bragging on so many times on these spotlights about myself, so I'm going to keep it short. If you want to see the full version, you'll see them already have so far. So background of myself, parents from former Yugoslavia, immigrants that have come here in the 70s. Lovely parents, loving parents. And of course, not of course, but I grew up in commission housing in an area called Redfern in Sydney. As the only child and obviously, hardworking parents growing up with not having what most of my friends around me at school had. So obviously that sort of gave me a little bit of a spark to, drive a little bit harder and more of a desire to achieve in life. Moving forward into my early 20s, started my own photography studio. Within about a year or so, saved up some money because of a landlord that I was renting from who was a major property investor / developer. Got some education and knowledge from him and then started investing myself. So fast forward again, I'm in my mid-40s. Had to think about that one. I'm in my mid-40s. Obviously doing what I do now, director of Buyers Agency Australia, and I guess I'm a successful property investor myself. teaching other people what to do and not to do through obviously education and through the business, but also most important for me and my dearest are my two young boys, educating them. So when they get to their mature age, they can easily be guided or have the knowledge to invest themselves the right way and not do the mistakes that I did earlier on in my 20s. Over to you, Amanda.
Okay, I'll keep it quick as well because I'm sure you
Did well then that time.
You did, but they know our life stories now. Told these stories sometimes. I try to take a different angle each time, so I'll see if I can
Yeah.
give a new spin on my upbringing this time. And I always draw a distinction between mine and Dragon's, as you see in all the other masterclasses, because we both have arrived into property investment through different pathways and different means and different influences. So I always try to take a different angle to Dragon. So he talked about, growing up in housing commission and not having what the other kids had. I didn't grow up with that sort of upbringing. My parents were comfortable. They weren't, rolling in it, but they weren't struggling either. My mum was a stay-at-home mum until all us kids started school. Then she returned to work. So both of my parents worked, and they both worked very hard, and we were comfortable. So for me, it wasn't about building up to a particular lifestyle. For me, it was about I'm used to a particular lifestyle. How do I carry that through into the rest of my life once I'm out on my own? My parents were very strong on information, not handouts. So, they may have had the means to help us kids out and, where they could, they did in the sense that we lived at home, for however long that we wanted to, or, if mum was out at the shops and she saw some clothes that we might like, she'd buy them. That sort of thing, yes, but it's not that they gave us our first deposit. They never went guarantor on anything for us. They didn't compensate for lifestyle choices that we made. If we made a poor choice, in their eyes, a poor choice, if we spent our money, stuffed around, they didn't rescue us, but they did give us knowledge and information, and they had expectations of us. And one of those expectations was that you buy property. If you like this lifestyle you've grown up with and you want to maintain it and you want to live in a nice house like the one you grew up in, well, you got to work hard, start young, buy early. Otherwise, you won't have the nice things. You have to wait till we're dead, as mum and dad. And even then, I'll probably be 70 or hopefully 70 plus myself by the time that comes. That's too late. Got to do it on my own. And they drummed that into us from a very young age. It's not handed to you. You've got to work for it. So for us, I'm one of three. For us, it was about not going backwards in life because we did come off a good base with good parents and good influences and good direction. So we were pushed from a young age into working hard, saving hard, and not squandering what we already had. That was a big thing for my parents. I'll go a little bit further because I remember really resenting my parents through this. When I was, I think, 19, 20, I was out of high school for a good year or so, and I was enjoying working and having money and having time and spending and carrying on and whatever. My parents are ethnic, so they didn't charge board. But they got to the point where they were like, Amanda, you're spending too much. You're not saving enough. So we're going to start confiscating some of your earnings, which they said, board, but we're going to put it away for you. So they started watching what I was spending and actually forcing savings because I didn't have the self-control. I didn't have the desire. I was 19. I didn't care. I had my life to live. I thought there's plenty of time for that. I wasn't in any rush. My parents put that sense of urgency into me. So where I said, there was no handouts, there wasn't any handouts, but there was some really strong parenting going on. So that's why I've sort of come into this because I know that not everybody has that. Not everyone has that push. I didn't have a choice. I don't want to sit here and go, I did this on my own and I didn't get there on my own in terms of mindset. It probably would have taken me another decade without that push. So, when I go no handouts, no, but there was a lot of knowledge and a lot of push and a lot of expectation. So I'm doing the same with my kids. They'll be raised the same way. They'll probably resent me the same way when I start confiscating their income and calling it board. But it's for a certain type of person, it was necessary, and I was one of those people.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amanda, who can be a buyer's agent? I
Yeah.
already know that question.
I hope so.
I,
So you wanted
no, you.
what brought you here?
You know what? your English teaching experience does so well. And if a lot of people ask out there, why is Dragan not as talkative as Amanda? First of all, I fear the camera. And second of all, Amanda speaks so well. Sometimes I can't get a question in. No, I'm joking.
I don't give him enough of a window to get a word in.
She's good in front of people. So, look, if you can be good in front of teenage boys, you could do
Can I
anything.
just stop you right there? Dad, if you're watching, when Dragan just said Amanda doesn't give me a chance to get a word in, I know my dad said, he would have turned to my mum and like, you're all the same, and my mother's daughter. So you just sounded like my dad then.
Okay.
Okay, so
Anyway.
who can be a buyer's agent? What qualifications are required? I know you're watching, Dad. Stop it. Okay, so almost nothing is required outside of what you would expect a real estate agent to have, okay? So you require, to be a real estate agent, you're required to be a real estate agent, to be a buyer's agent, you're required to have your real estate license in whatever states you're operating in.
Yep.
So for us, if we're buying in New South Wales, Queensland, wherever, we've got to be licensed in those states, okay? No different to a real estate agent.
Yeah.
So what a real estate license does is that it licenses you to participate or facilitate property transactions, the buying and selling of property. So a lot of real estate agents become buyer's agents because they don't want to work Saturdays anymore running open homes, or they don't want to work, evenings doing appraisals and so on. So they go, you know what, I want a 9-to-5 job. They think it's a 9-to-5 job. So they become a buyer's agent. Little do they know that a lot of clients that you deal with also work. So you're calling them out of hours. Same mentality.
Yep.
But a lot of
So just so people who really want to know, I work 8 a.m. to 8, sometimes 9 p.m. And I would say a good most half of Saturday during the morning.
So if you're an ex-real estate agent looking at being a buyer's agent because you don't like working Saturdays, sorry to break it to you, but you can stop at this slot.
It's true. Very true.
No, this is for the clients that are looking at what qualifications are required for accountability, right? So you don't necessarily have to have practiced as a selling agent. You need to be licensed as an agent to transact in property, whether that's the buyer side or the seller side, doesn't really matter. It's the license to transact, okay? You need to have the proper insurances, so professional indemnity to 2 million. Single party representation. This one is the big one. So whatever you are doing right now, stop, put down what you're doing and listen. That's the teacher in me. Put your phones down. Unless you're
headphones in this class?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is teacher mode now. This is the point. This is on the exam. That's the line.
Okay.
This is on the exam. Single party representation. So what that means is that you are only allowed to represent one side of the negotiations. You can't represent the buyer and the seller at the same time. So the example that I always use here is that sometimes when you deal with real estate agents, and I'm talking selling agents, sometimes when you approach them as a buyer, they'll use phrases like, oh, I'm just trying to help you buy a property here. I'm trying to tell you what price will secure the property. I'm just helping you out. They're not helping you out, okay, because of this single party representation rule. They are representing whichever party is paying their commission. So a selling agent represents the seller, the vendor, okay? No matter how much they say they're helping you out, they're not, because by law, they can only represent one party in a negotiation or in a property transaction.
Yep.
Okay. Are you looking to get a word in there?
No, that's good. That's right. No, you're perfect.
Okay. So sometimes they'll try to represent themselves as middlemen. They'll act like they're, the little dude in the middle as you guys play tennis, vendor, seller, vendor, seller. They're not a middleman. They are representing and paid by the vendor. Buyer's agents like Dragan represented or representing and paid by the buyer. So selling agent, buyer's agent, two different sides of the transaction. As a licensed agent, you can only represent one side of the negotiations. So in our case, we represent the buyer side. Our goal is to get the best deal for you. The seller's agent role is to get the best for their client. We have a duty to act in your best interest because you're paying our fee, in this case, not a commission, okay? So single party representation. This is where it gets a little bit hairy, and you'll see this in the other masterclass where we talk about marketing spin. There's some buyer's agents,
or wealth creators,
whatever they call themselves, where their fees are paid for by somebody else. Therefore, in a negotiation between you and the somebody else, it's the somebody else that legally, ethically, and morally and all of that they're representing.
Yeah.
So if you are considering using a service that you're not actually paying for, and they'll pitch that in a way that, looks like they're saving you.
Yep.
If you're considering using a service where you're not paying, it means you are legally not represented in a transaction.
Now, there's some companies that I'm aware of that also charge a membership fee, a lifetime membership fee, making it think that you're paying for it, but they're really representing the seller, developer, or the
Yeah.
other side. So their interest lies with them and not you. Their interest lies in getting the deal for them, not you.
Yes. So in those cases, they're selling agents because their commission is paid for by the seller or the developer, the vendor or the developer. What you're doing, the membership that you're paying, is to get yourself onto their database of buyers. Now, any real estate agent will put you on their mailing list for free. So if you're paying to be put on a mailing list, which is essentially what it is, any real estate agent, any selling agent can do that. Now, they're offering you exclusive whatever, blah, 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 blah. And they're representing both sides. So if they're charging a commission from the vendor or the developer and then a membership fee from you, technically they're skirting the law because one fee is to manage the transaction, the other fee is for access to the deals. But if you really drill it down and both sides are paying a fee to the same middleman, they're really kind of dodging this single party representation law. And the reason for that law is to protect the consumer. That law is there to protect you from agents double dipping commissions.
Yep. And a lot of the time they'll actually spin it that you are accessing their accountants, their brokers, their conveyancers. And if you watch the last Spotlight Masterclass, which is I think it was in the tax part, that is the part where you should be wary of if they're doing that. So just be careful of anyone offering their in-house, because again, they tailor things to their benefit or to their client's benefit, not yours.
100%.
Yeah.
If you have the time, I highly recommend you watch all of these little mini masterclasses, because we really do zoom in on individual topics. And that's why we've structured it in this way, because like the big main one that we did, that's a great overview. Start with that one so you know which topics and which order to pinpoint your spotlights. But if you get time to watch all of them, or at least all of the ones that are relevant to you, we really do zoom in on everything.
Yeah.
So you'll come in fully informed, when you talk to us or when you're ready to move forward. Yep. So the next thing here is the buyer's side of the industry isn't as regulated as the selling side, because in Australia, we've been mostly driven by only the vendor being represented by an agent. So typically in the past in Australia, a property would be listed by a real estate agent, and then you as a buyer would approach that real estate agent directly without representation for yourself as a buyer. In the US, the model's a little bit different. They are more commonly structured to use a system where the vendor and the buyer each have representation. So in the States, if you're looking to purchase a property, you'll actually have an agent that deals with selling agents for you, and they have the buyer's agents and the seller's agent, and it's a different kind of model. Australia's kind of heading that way, slowly but surely heading that way. It seems to be more of an investment thing at the moment, but it's becoming more of a principal place of residence thing. And I think in another generation, we're probably going to be pretty close to the American model. So what we have now, what we're seeing in Australia, is this big influx of buyers agents coming into the market, and this big demand from buyers wanting to be represented in negotiations and transactions, because buyers have worked out it's actually not fair that the seller is represented and they're not. Because to have an agent representing the vendor and then to come in as an inexperienced individual just looking to buy a house,
Yeah.
It's not a fair negotiation.
That's right.
Right?
It's kind of like just if you were to go to a court hearing and you've got the opposite side having a lawyer and you don't.
Yeah.
It's
They're
unfair.
showing up unrepresented.
That's right.
Yeah. So what we have is this influx of buyers agents, but the laws and regulations haven't caught up with that yet. So we expect there to be changes or tightening of regulations as time goes on. So what we're discussing now is what it currently is. I think it should be reviewed and tightened, and I think it will be.
It definitely should be. I've heard so many horror stories with past clients and other
Yeah.
people, um, using buyers agents who have very little experience, and then and it's sad because you're not playing with small dollars here. You're in the hundreds of thousands, and it's an investment. If that goes wrong, there's consequences to be paid. So,
Mm.
but anyway, Amanda.
I'm glad you brought that up though, because what we do have at the moment is opt-in qualifications, where buyers agents can choose to opt in to regulations that hold them to a certain code of ethics and behavior. So if they opt in, they're bound by that, or they lose their membership to these organizations. And the two organizations I've got there are Reba and Pippa. So by committing to that professional standard, you're opting in to being held accountable to certain guidelines and ethical behavior for the protection of the client and the consumer, which is you. So for Reba, the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia, to qualify for membership, and that's just entry membership, you need to have 12 months business operating experience. You can't be working on the seller side as well. Okay, so we talked about that, single side model. You can only work for one side. So you can't be a real estate agent, like a selling agent with a buyer's agency arm. No double dipping. So Reba will only allow you in if you're committed to the buyer side and the interests of the buyer. So some of these buyer's agents that make someone else pay the fee don't qualify for Reba membership because they don't meet the code of ethics for it. One side, one party representation. You represent both parties, you don't qualify for this industry standard. It's opt-in. So our business model has opted into that. We represent the buyer and only the buyer, which is you. And then, of course, adherence to the code of conduct. So if a client were to make a complaint and then forward that complaint to Reba, and then that complaint is substantiated by Reba through their investigation, we lose our membership. Same with Pippa. Pippa's a little bit more involved though. So Reba, Real Estate Buyers Agents Association, that applies to both principal places of residence and investment property purchases through a buyer's agent. Pippa's focused more on the investment side, so Property Investment Professionals of Australia. And the reason that Pippa is a little bit more nuanced is because when you're advising people on their investment property journey, you're not just purchasing a property for them based on their own brief. So if I approach a buyer's agent for a place to live as opposed to investing, if I'm looking for a place to live, I kind of know what I want, right? I might go, well, I've got 3 kids, so I need 4 bedrooms. I work from home sometimes, so I need an office. I have a big ethnic family, so I need a lot of living areas and entertaining areas. I need a big kitchen. I might have a butler's pantry. I want this, I want that, I want whatever. I want a beanie, schools, parks, whatever. I have a list in my head of where I want to live. So if I approach a buyer's agent to help me buy a place to live, I'm going to that buyer's agent with a brief already in my hand of what I want. And then they just have to go and find it, negotiate for me and help me out. Pippa is a little bit more nuanced on the investment side. So with Pippa, they recognise that a lot of people that use a buyer's agent for the purpose of investing may not know what they should be buying. That's why they're using a buyer's agent. So there's a little bit of a gap there between the service required of the buyer's agent to the client when they're looking for an investment property, because we're not just filling a brief. Sometimes we're creating the brief with the client. Okay. So what Pippa has recognised there is that there were a lot of buyers agents emerging into the market for investors or under the guise of working for investors, when in reality they were just trying to sell their own stock or sell their developer stock, or they had relationships with particular industry people where they were trying to sell one type of stock or a one size fits all model based on what they had the contacts, the network, the experience for, rather than actually giving good and proper investment advice to the client. So Pippa developed an online course. It's an accredited course, and it's basically 6 online modules and also requires a Cert 4 in brokerage. So what Pippa's created is a minimum degree of knowledge about property investment that the buyer's agents must have, and finance that the buyer's agents must have if they're going to provide advice on property investment specifically. So they've created this course to show that, okay, agents that have committed to this course and qualify for membership as a QPIA, a Qualified Property Investment Advisor, which Dragan's got, it means that they are committed to the code of conduct and the ethics and all of that, but they've also got the training to be able to design the brief for your purchase for you or with you or in collaboration with you, as opposed to showing you case studies or client stories or pigeonholing you or tunneling you into a one-size-fits-all, or, buy brand new off the plan only, or buy this one, but, it's actually, I suppose, in some ways, a training module on how to personalize, create, and advise on property investment portfolio design. Okay. So Dragan's got that qualification as well. So even though these are not regulated at an industry level, they're not minimum requirements for all buyer's agents. They are opt-in only at this stage. What you want to look for is a buyer's agent that has opted in to both of those, because it means that they're committed to the best service for the client as opposed to the best service for themselves or who they're really representing based on who is really paying their commission or their fee. So if they don't qualify or there's no reason for them not to have these, is essentially what I'm saying. For them not to have these as a reason, they're either not qualifying for it or they're not a buyer's agent. They just want you to think they are.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, with especially with the pitfall, they just don't have the experience, really. I mean, I've heard, a few buyer's agents that have tried and they failed miserably because they just don't have the experience. So how can these buyer's agents be representing, clients with their investment?
Yeah. And the reason that buyer's agents as a profession fall through the cracks of a lot of the protections to consumers when it comes to financial advice, because if you go to a financial advisor, a broker, an accountant, any of those professionals, they are bound by certain laws around financial products. So if they're selling you financial products such as insurance, such as a mortgage, such as, all those things that you go to your accountant, your broker, and your financial advisor for, they're selling you what are called financial products. So they're bound by the legalities around selling under the category, under the umbrella of a financial product. Property is not considered a financial product. It's considered a direct-to-consumer product because you're purchasing a physical entity, like a thing, right? It's not a share. It's not in a managed fund, for shares or anything like that. You're purchasing a real thing, like real estate. Okay. So because you're purchasing a direct product, it falls through the cracks of those regulatory protections that are in place for consumers. Okay. So what we do is outside of the scope, for example, of a financial advisor. If you go to a financial advisor and say, hey, I want to build a $50 million property portfolio, that financial advisor is going to say to you, you know what, I'm qualified in selling financial products. Property is not a financial product. You need to go see a buyer's agent, but I can help you with structuring and insurance.
Yeah. It's pretty much like just, when you're sick, you go to a general practitioner, GP, and then they will figure out what the problem is with you and then send you off to the specialist. So the financial advisor is your GP, and people like myself, a buyer's agent, are the specialists within that field.
That's right. And the reason that these protections exist is because under that financial umbrella, if someone that does fall under that, so your broker, your accountant, or your financial advisor, if they give you financial advice that leads to a loss, then there are certain laws that protect you in litigation that basically default to your favor. We are not really bound by that because we're not selling you a financial product. So there's a lot of buyer's agents that are a bit cowboyish in the sense that they know that the product that they're representing you in isn't covered by these consumer protection laws. So they don't care. Because once you've purchased the property, they're not really liable for anything.
Their hands are clean.
Not that their hands are, and there's got a moral, I would hope they have a moral conscience, but legally, there's not really anything that you can do because you're not protected by the law with this type of product as a consumer or as a client. So that's why I said those opt-ins give you some degree of, I suppose, comfort for their moral compass, but also if there has been a disgruntled client in the past, that membership would become invalidated. So while that membership is valid, you can at least have some degree of confidence that no one's brought forward any kind of claim against that buyer's agent. So ethical behaviors, and then I talked there about a client-led brief versus a buyer's agent-led brief. You want someone that's qualified to guide you and build the brief with you. Did you want to add anything before we move on? We're all good? Okay. So are these regulations likely to change? Yes, and I hope so. Because as Dragan said, we get a lot of clients that come to us after working with somebody else and they've been burned by one or more of these, I suppose, gaps in the regulation in the industry. So we talked about, the huge recent influx of buyer's agents, and I do think that there is a need for buyer's agents in the market because, like we said, you want fair representation on both sides. The selling side is a bit more regulated than the buying side, but I think the buying side will catch up.
Definitely.
We are becoming more Americanized. The financial advice industry has just been massively overhauled. If you have a financial advisor, have a chat to them about what the industry looks like now compared to 10 years ago. They had the Royal Commission. They cleaned a whole lot of stuff up. We all know about Melissa Caddick. So there's a lot of regulation that's gone on there. I think the flow-on effect will be that they'll start coming after other related industries, particularly those direct products like property and buyer's agents. So absolutely, I do believe an industry cleanup is required. In the meantime, as a consumer, how do you protect yourself? The only way to protect yourself is to know what protections are out there currently. And at the moment, it's a real estate license and an opt-in to a code of ethics, conduct and behavior. Other than that, you've got to assess your buyer's agent based on what information are they giving me, what qualifications do they have, what experience do they have, do they know their stuff? Looking at education, things like this, what information are they giving? Do they know what they're talking about? Do they have a background, or are they just an ex-real estate agent flogging, their ex-colleague's stock? Are they someone pretending to be a buyer's agent flogging developer stock pre-sales off the plan? Are they someone trying to push a one-size-fits-all because they don't have that PIPA qualification to give advice? Know what you're dealing with and know what you're looking for and know what you want. Know who can help you in your best interest and know what is available currently to protect you. Because at the moment, those consumer protections are in the financial space, but not necessarily the property space. So be aware and, hopefully you make some smart choices with good information available to you.
That's right. And anyone out there who wants to jump on a free 15-minute discovery session, you have the QR code up here. Please scan it. Book yourself in or go to propertysessions.com.au/15. Have your questions ready and you'll have a discussion with myself for 15 minutes. Ask whatever you need to ask and hopefully I can answer them and help you there. So Amanda, thank you very much. We're going to jump on to the second part of this Spotlight Master session. I'll see you there.
See you there.